Chiefs news, analysis, and opinion every day. The Kansas City Chiefs had brought in an absolute freak athlete at the linebacker position, something that the Kansas City Chiefs seem to be trending towards at that position. The linebacker in question is Brandon George out of Pitt, and the graphic on the screen is courtesy MathBomb on Twitter/X. Brandon George, linebacker from Pittsburgh, hands 9.75, arm length 33. Those things are kind of run-of-the-mill numbers. Arm length, that's a good arm length for a linebacker. But look at this RAS, relative athletic score of 9.98. Perfect is a 10. So the only thing keeping him back is that one yellow box there, which is a 40-yard dash. Yellow is an acceptable color. 4.65 is an acceptable number, but we have absolute monster numbers everywhere else. 6'3", 248 pounds, basically prototype linebacker, middle linebacker size in the NFL. 28 reps on the bench press. That is a great number for a linebacker. And you look, bench press, you can say what you want about it. What efficacy is there for the football field? But the real thing that you're looking at with the bench press is how dedicated is this guy to getting bigger, to getting stronger, to getting faster. Bench press can give you one of the answers there. Now, I'm going to check something because I did not get this figured into the numbers that I have pulled up later, but one of the better numbers we have ever seen for the linebacker here in Kansas City is Leo Chenal with 34 reps. So 28 is still an elite number. Not 34, but it does tell you that Brandon George is in the weight room and dedicated to his craft. A 42.5-inch vertical leap. Wooey. That is defensive back type stuff. That is an elite vertical leap, for anyone in the sport of football. You do not see many 42.5s. A 10-foot 8-inch broad jump is not a perfect score, but it's a good number for a linebacker. Once again, that 4.65 40-yard dash with a 1.59 10-yard split. I don't really look at the 20s very much, but the 1.59 10-yard split, that's a good number. Not as elite as some of the other testing scores he has here, but a short shuttle, 20-yard short shuttle of 4.14 is a really good number. 3-cone drill of 6.98, a really good number. We're going to come back to these numbers in a minute because I've got a little bit of context in which I will put these numbers, because I think sometimes just throwing them out there is kind of nebulous and not really worth a whole lot because it's a whole lot of numbers at one time. So, looking at him from a standpoint of what did he do in college, one thing is going to stand out real fast, and that's right here. 3 senior seasons: freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Only started 1 year in college. Was only a full-time starter during the 2024 season, but he had a pretty good 2024 season. Is a guy who has added 4 sacks during his time in college, but that final year is what you're looking at. Maybe a late bloomer from Brandon George, maybe a guy that just had to wait on his opportunity. Maybe this is what you would call a gamer, right? Someone who does not practice well, but ends up showing out on game day. But whatever the case, in those 13 games, he had 80 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, an interception, and a pass deflection, along with a fumble recovery and 3 forced fumbles. So not all-star type stuff, but still a solid performer on the defensive side of things. And I have a story later that I will tell because this might be what is going on here. It's hard to sort of rectify what's going on with the disparity between his athleticism and his performance on the field. You look at, for example, Leo Chenal, who we're going to talk about very shortly here, absolute legend at the college level. I mean, he was lining up in the A-gap. He was smoking dudes over the middle of the field. Everything that you could want from a linebacker, hard-nosed, tough guy linebacker. Leo Chenal did it at the college level. Brandon George has not. He contributed all of his college seasons, including all 3 of those senior years. Sounds like my experience in college, but contributing and having 3 senior years is what I mean. I was not a football player. But here we go. Brandon George is the top line, Leo Chenal the second line, Jack Cochran, whose roster spot Brandon George will be competing for, is the third line, and then Nick Bolton, just to see, because these other 3 are kind of athletic marvels. These other 3 guys, Brandon George, Leo Chenal, and Jack Cochran, are all guys that stand out from an athletic performance standpoint. Nick Bolton, not as much, is more of an on-the-field linebacker. But what are we looking at with these numbers from Brandon George? He's 6'3". Well, that's the same height as Leo Chenal, thereabouts. Leo Chenal, I think, is 6'2" and 5/8", something like that. We'll say 6'3". I don't have a precise measurement on Brandon George. Jack Cochran, 6'3". Then you come down to Nick Bolton, starting middle linebacker on his second contract in the NFL. Nick Bolton, who has been a standout since his rookie season, 5'11". So Brandon George has 4 inches, on Nick Bolton. 248 pounds. Well, Leo Chenal is 250. It's 2 pounds bigger. They're basically this. I mean, that's your morning breakfast, right? That's whether or not you had your 3 S's in the morning. 236 for Jack Cochran, 237 for Nick Bolton. I believe Nick Bolton has beefed up a little bit since he's been in the NFL. So he is the second heaviest. Tied for the first tallest, the second heaviest. What about arm length for Brandon George? 33 inches. Leo Chenal, 31 inches. Jack Cochran, 31 inches. Nick Bolton, 32 inches. He has the longest arms of this group. What about the 40? 4.65. Well, he's one of the slowest there because Leo Chenal ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, absolutely blazing for a guy that's 250 pounds. Jack Cochran had a 4.65, and Nick Bolton had a 4.60. Still, this 4.65 is not an unacceptable number, especially for a middle linebacker, which I think you're going to see Brandon George, if he does get defensive snaps in the NFL, will be a middle linebacker type guy. A 1.59 10-yard split. Leo Chenal, with that blazing speed, had a 1.50. That's linebacker to the core, right? You're fast, but you're real fast in those first 10 yards because, well, that's how far it is between you lining up 4 yards in the defensive backfield to the quarterback, who is going to be about 6 yards in the offensive backfield. So only forward for Leo Chenal. And then we have a 1.60 from Jack Cochran, who, look, that's a good number, but Brandon George, is a little bit faster. And then the 1.71 from Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton, who has the second fastest 40-yard dash on this list, has the slowest 10-yard split. Then you have the vertical leap, 42.5 inches. Just for reference here, Leo Chenal and Jack Cochran had incredible vertical leaps. 40.5 inches for Leo Chenal, 41 for Jack Cochran. Brandon George beats both of them, and Nick Bolton down there at 32 inches. So 10.5 inch advantage for Brandon George on Nick Bolton for an explosive number like a vertical leap. And then there is the broad jump, 10 foot 5 inches, bested only in this group by Leo Chenal's 10 foot 8 inches, 10 foot 4 for Jack Cochran, and 9 foot 7 for Nick Bolton. Nearly a foot advantage for Brandon George over Nick Bolton. Then there is the 20-yard short shuttle. A 4.14 is an elite number for a linebacker. 4.24 for Leo Chenal. 4.10 for Jack Cochran. This is one of the reasons why I thought Jack Cochran might transition to safety in the NFL. Never ended up happening. But a 4.50 for Nick Bolton. A difference between 4.14 and 4.50. Then we get the 3-cone drill here, 6.98. So Brandon George on the 20-yard short shuttle, second best time of the lot. And then the 3-cone drill, I'm tying up my words today, 6.98, the same as Leo Chenal. Those two numbers are the best of this group, a 7.27 for Jack Cochran and a 7.40 for Nick Bolton. Nearly a half a second difference. That is a massive difference in these types of things. I don't do this to disparage Nick Bolton. I'm just saying you can be successful in the NFL at the middle linebacker position with Nick Bolton's testing numbers, but Brandon George beats them by a country mile. So, what are we looking at with Brandon George? What is the scouting here? We've got the numbers. What is the scouting here? Well, he only started one season in college. That is a massive red flag for someone who was on campus for 6 seasons and it's not like he was at Ohio State, right? So the fact that he couldn't crack that lineup and become the full-time starter is a red flag for getting him to the NFL level. But there's lots of ways to contribute in the NFL. You don't have to be a starting middle linebacker. Now, why is there extra reason to be sort of optimistic about him on the team? Well, Brett Veach has a long history of bringing in UDFA linebackers that become NFL contributors. Jack Cochran, for example, we just talked about, is on his second contract in the NFL as a UDFA. He was a jackrabbit in college, so the scouting department goes deep with the linebackers. Ben Niemann, say what you will about him, and I know we all have at times, but he was an undrafted rookie free agent. I believe that was Brett Veach's first draft class. He came in and nabbed Ben Niemann as a member of the UDFA class who ended up being in the NFL for a number of years. I think he played for the Saints after he left Kansas City, right? Darius Harris got a lot of linebacker snaps for the Kansas City Chiefs. Zane Anderson, UDFA linebacker out of BYU, though he played safety in the NFL, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Mike Rose, last season or the year before, Mike Rose came in as a member of the UDFA class, and he didn't play for the Chiefs. He didn't make it to the season for the Chiefs, but he was in the UFL, and then I think, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think he played for the Saints. I think he was a special teams guy for the Saints, but I might be wrong on that one. Regardless, there's still Cam Jones as well. So there is a long history for Brett Veach and this front office bringing in UDFA linebackers that will contribute at the NFL level, that will maybe not all take defensive snaps, but have done something in the NFL. As far as he is concerned from a football perspective, he has the speed and explosiveness to make a difference on the field, and he shows it sometimes. If the Chiefs can get him to become a consistent performer, and I think there's some extenuating circumstances there, but if they can get him to become a consistent performer, he has all the tools necessary to be a starting level linebacker in the NFL. Now, the NFL is a wasteland of guys who have the 40-yard dash and the vertical leap and the bench press numbers, but just can't put it together on the field because the NFL on the field is so technically sound. All the fundamentals are there for almost everyone who starts in the NFL, and fundamentals get you a long way. That's why they have become fundamentals of the game. So, does this mean he will be a starting level linebacker in the NFL? Absolutely not, right? So, there's work to be done, but he has the tools to get there. You look at someone like Mike Rose, for example. Mike Rose didn't have the tools, but he had some of the measurables, and he had a long history of being a hard-nosed linebacker at the college level. Just was it fast enough? Wasn't overall athletic enough? And that washed out. I think he's still in the NFL, though. But here's what I think we're looking at for Brandon George. This is Jack Cochran's history in the NFL. As a rookie in 2022, he played 262 special team snaps. His second year in 2023, he ended up starting a game. It was because of injury. Remember, there was a rash of injuries for the Chiefs at the linebacker position, but he racked up 180 defensive reps at linebacker and added 336 special team snaps on the year. That's 500 snaps of football in a season, right? Last year, only played the 9 snaps of defense, but still had nearly 300 special team snaps with 297. If you get these guys as UDFAs, it saves you a whole lot of money from having to sign a Jack Cochran off the street as an NFL player with a veteran minimum. And it gives you, so having a UDFA, the likes of Jack Cochran, means they're on a cheap contract. The Chiefs have to have a bunch of cheap contracts because they have the best piece in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. So being able to replenish the bottom half of the roster and churn the bottom half of the roster with guys like Jack Cochran becomes absolutely necessary in the salary cap era. And I think there's a possibility we'll get into later that Jack Cochran is not gone from the Kansas City Chiefs, should even Brandon George stay on the Chiefs as a special teams contributor and not just be a practice squad guy this year. So Brandon George needs a lot of coaching, and I could not find a date of birth for him, but you're looking at probably 23 years old, likely maybe 24 years old. That doesn't sound alarming at the offset. And it's not alarming. It's a football player, right? So being a 24-year-old football player isn't all that crazy. He's not old for a football player. He's old for a rookie. But Nick Bolton is 25. Nick Bolton is 25 on his second contract. Nick Bolton is 25, having played an entire 4-year rookie contract and been a contributor all 4 years. So Brandon George coming in at 24 with zero experience is a little bit alarming. His age is likely what took him off of draft boards, especially when you look at all the fundamentals you're probably going to have to invest in him. Because at the end of his rookie deal, say you took him in the 7th round, you made him Mr. Irrelevant. 4 years and he'll be 27 or 28, right? But as a UDFA, the investment is in favor of the Chiefs, even if it takes him a year or two to get where you need him to be from a fundamentals standpoint. Now, sometimes, and this is likely why he only started 1 year in college, sometimes he looks lost on the field. Looks like he doesn't know where he's at. Looks like he doesn't know where he's going. Looks like he has no idea what the offense is doing around him. That's a bad thing, right? Especially for a linebacker right in the middle of all the congestion. You give up the middle of the field, and it's real problems for your defense. But when he is assignment sound, he is very aware. He has a highlight reel interception that you can find on YouTube where he was on the ground in the middle of the field, probably not the best place for a middle linebacker to be, and two players, I think, tipped a pass, and he's on the ground looking up the ball. He just puts his arms out and catches it. That's a real level of awareness. That's someone who is not asleep on the field. So I had a friend in high school, absolute freak as well, and he played football. And he was good at football. And he gets to college, and it's the first practice of his first day in college, and they shove him out there on the field. They say, hey, go play some linebacker, because this is his exact position, linebacker. And the ball is snapped, and it's a fake to the fullback. Well, my friend just absolutely creamed the fullback. Boom, pop. Took him to the ground. Bang. Big hit. Big noise. Big action. He didn't have the ball. It was a fake. All of a sudden, the guy who he was supposed to be covering, the tight end, wide open over the middle of the field. Why? Because my friend is on the ground celebrating a tackle. It wasn't the right player. So the coach stops the practice, says, hey, come over here. As a linebacker, what is your first read? Now, where I went to, so I quit football my senior year to get a job, right? But where I went to high school, maybe not grade A coaches, okay? Just going to put that out there. The coach in college asked my friend, what is your first read as a linebacker? We didn't get that kind of coaching in high school. My friend says, the ball. and was promptly destroyed by his coach, and rightly so. The first read is not the ball. The first read is the offensive guard. Why? Does the guy pop straight up? Then it's a pass. Does the guy burst out forward? Then it's a run. Then you get to put together everything else behind your first read. That might be where Brandon George is. He might be in one of these places where there's some element of the game that does not click for him because he has all of the athleticism to be a starting linebacker. He has, at times, all of the fundamentals to be a linebacker, a starting linebacker. But something isn't clicking. If it is a matter of that, where it's just some coinkydink with coaching, then all of a sudden you have a pretty good player on your hands. I think the floor this season is the practice squad. I think there is a good possibility that he becomes a bottom of the 53 special teams ace this season. But with Bolton, Chanel, Tranquil, and now Bassa ahead of him, and possibly Jack Cochran, if Jack Cochran remains on the roster, ahead of him, I don't think he will see the field on defense. You saw that from last year, where a guy who played 180 snaps the prior season, Jack Cochran, only played 9 snaps of defense. So can the Kansas City Chiefs keep both Jack Cochran and Brandon George as special teams linebackers? I think yes. And I think part of that is because of the evolving play that is the NFL kickoff. I've said for a couple years now, once those rules go into play, I think it's going to be running backs that are kick returners. It's not going to be wide receivers. It's not going to be cornerbacks. It's going to be running backs. You have to break a tackle when all of those bodies are so close together. Which means if the running backs become the kick returners, you are likely to see linebackers become the special teams aces. The Chiefs have traditionally kept defensive backs as the special teams aces. But when all of those guys, so the kickoff now, you've got all these bodies 10 yards apart from each other, very close to where the kickoff is going to land. Your running backs are going to be able to break the tackles, so you have to have guys that can shed the blocks, which are linebackers, not guys who can run 40 yards downfield in 4.2 seconds. Remember, the kickoff used to be all that way. You had to run. If you can do it in 4.2 seconds, all of a sudden you are much more valuable on that kickoff team. But if the length is only 20, 25 yards, then the bigger advantage goes to the guy who can break that block, shed that block, the moment the contact is initiated. Because that guy is going to be downfield by the running back likely that much faster. So I think you're going to see an evolution in the NFL where it's the linebackers that are the special teams aces and not defensive backs. Anyway, guys, that is what I have for this video. We will be back later today, I believe, with an Elijah Badger video, a UDFA wide receiver out of Florida who, by the way, has a very good possibility of making this roster. So that's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We are over 2 years of consecutive daily uploads, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.